This is CNN.
A home and a family shattered by Hurricane Andrew. In the storm's aftermath, a Florida couple wants to give their adopted children back.
In the debate hall and in the candidates' campaigns, final preparations for tonight's vice presidential debate.
And the flag and free speech, a burning issue before the Supreme Court. Early Prime continues. I'm Lou Waters.
I'm Sharyl Attkisson. Also ahead, how a hotel is helping breast cancer patients keep down hospital costs.
Here's what's happening. Officials in South Florida still are searching for dozens of foster children missing in the wake of Hurricane Andrew. One family is trying to give up its foster children, in part because of stress caused by the storm. But as CNN's Charles Jaco reports, the state is trying to force the family to stay together.
Hurricane Andrew blew away safety and security for the children in its path, and it's blown Alma and Gary Knight's adopted children into court. In September 1991, the Knights, who have two children of their own already, adopted an 11-year-old boy and his 7-year-old sister. Both had serious behavior problems, depression, anxiety, setting fires, urinating on floors. Then, Hurricane Andrew tore through Homestead, Florida, destroying the Knights' home and their business. Faced with total destruction and with the children's behavior, the Knights went to court asking to return the kids they'd adopted.
The children who do not want to go back to the Knights, and I think that even if the adoptive parents, were to change their minds at this point and want counseling, from everything I've been able to learn as the attorney for these children, I do not believe that going back to the Knights would be in the children's best interest. And I want
the children agree, the Knights agree, the State Child Services Agency does not.
I am very sensitive to what the Knights have gone through, but as we've said from the outset, our department is in charge with trying to keep the families together, to try to help families when they're going through a difficult time like this.
The idea is that adoption is supposed to be permanent.
Certainly HRS is not there, to have children just brought back to it when something goes wrong. These parents did take on a responsibility, and we want to try to work with them.
But Hurricane Andrew helped change the rules. Hurricane Andrew left foster care in Dade County in a shambles. The Knight children are just the most visible example of foster children whose lives and homes were wrecked once again by forces beyond their control. Hundreds of foster homes were destroyed by the hurricane. The state has lost track of dozens of those children since their families evacuated and have not yet been located. But this is the first case where the storm pushed an adoptive family over the edge.
We had a Category 4 hurricane flow through and affect in a major way every human being that stayed in the home that night. It is inevitable that some people will be unable to cope with all the stresses, and they will look for ways to relieve those stresses.
The Knights earlier said this is the hardest decision they've ever made, and if the judge agrees, it's a decision that will have been propelled by a hurricane's fury. Charles Jaco, CNN, Miami.
Hundreds of small aftershocks rumbled through Cairo, Egypt, as nervous residents tried to recover from yesterday's killer quake. Government officials say more than 400 people died. More from CNN's Gary Stryker in Cairo.
On Monday night, rescue workers hunted frantically for survivors in the rubble of a 14-story apartment building that collapsed in the earthquake. About 15 people had already been found, injured but alive. This woman was dug out of the concrete, incredibly, with only a few scratches. But nearby, her son was found dead. The earthquake hit Cairo shortly after 3 o'clock on Monday afternoon when children were still in school. Many people died when they were trampled by panicking crowds escaping from buildings. More than 40 people were praying in this mosque when the earthquake hit. They ran outside just before the domed roof came down. The tremor destroyed more than 200 buildings in the Cairo area, damaging thousands more. Experts say this was a moderate earthquake, measuring not more than 5.9 on the Richter scale. It was centered about 20 miles southwest of Cairo, not far from the Great Pyramids and the Sphinx, which were not damaged.
We came after the earthquake right away, and we found there is nothing really happened to the Sphinx at all.
But even a moderate quake like this one can cause extensive damage and casualties in Cairo. Millions live in decrepit old buildings, or in shoddy new ones like this apartment block. On Tuesday night, rescue workers continued to find more victims in this building. There is little hope that any more will be found alive. At least 13 bodies have already been recovered here. The Egyptian Red Crescent Society says this disaster has left at least 1,000 people dead, missing, or homeless, with more than 10,000 injured. The government says the number of dead may exceed 400, but at this early stage, no one really knows. Gary Stryker, CNN, Cairo.
The Irish Republican Army says it is behind the latest bombing in London. The bomb exploded in a bar in the Covent Garden section yesterday, killing one person and wounding 4 others. That is the 8th IRA bomb in central London in 7 days.
The candidates for vice president step out of the shadow of their running mates and into the spotlight tonight. All 3 are in Atlanta, ready to share the stage in the vice presidential debate. Dan Quayle arrived in Atlanta today. He promised a great debate. Republican aides say the vice president plans to take aim at Bill Clinton's programs rather than targeting Democratic opponent Al Gore. The Democrats say Gore needs to make a convincing case for Clinton's programs and the need for change. Clinton's VP pick claims he could be hurt by low expectations about Quayle's performance. Ross Perot's running mate has the job of introducing himself to American voters. The retired Vice Admiral James Stockdale is a political newcomer, and he admits he's a little intimidated by the 3-way face-off tonight. A new CNN USA Today Gallup poll shows an overwhelming majority. 61% think Gore will come out on top tonight. Only 19% believe Quayle will win the debate. 5% expect Stockdale to make the best showing tonight. CNN's live coverage of the debate begins at 6:30 Eastern tonight. The debate itself gets underway a half hour later at 7 p.m. Eastern.
In the race for the #1 spot at the White House, the character issue reared its head today. In a television interview this morning, President Bush once again bashed Clinton's draft status, and he promised to continue to bring up the issue because he says it raises questions about Clinton's character. The Democrats have been trying to raise questions about Bush's character by demanding he come clean on the Iran-Contra affair. Bush insists he didn't know about funds being diverted to the Contras, and he says the Democrats are bringing up the issue to divert attention from Clinton's draft record. President Bush also stood up for his running mate Dan Quayle today, saying Quayle will do quite well in tonight's debate.
I think Dan Quayle will be, I love these polls. 92% of the people, or 83, think Gore will be the winner. 16 Quayle. He'll do fine. He has taken a real pounding out there, and just so grossly unfair. Do you remember the pounding he took on going into the National Guard? I do. He served his country, and oh, the terrible pounding he got for influence, which was not true, going into the Guard. And now we have a guy running for president who wanted to stay out of everything. And we got to look back. It was 20 years ago. We got to heal the wounds. Come on. Let's have some fairness. Dan Quayle will do great in this debate.
Democratic nominee Bill Clinton got in some long-distance sparring with President Bush over the truth today. Before arriving in Virginia to prepare for the next presidential debate, Clinton suggested Mr. Bush has not told the truth about his role in the Iran-Contra affair. Clinton said evidence in the case contradicts Mr. Bush's claim that he had no information about the scheme. Yesterday in Philadelphia, Clinton picked up the endorsements of retired military leaders. The move is designed to counter President Bush's criticism of Clinton's Vietnam-era draft status. Independent candidate Ross Perot has a new campaign ad. It portrays the national debt as a brewing storm that's destroying American jobs. Now, that ad calls Perot a proven business leader who has the know-how to balance the budget. Ironically, the ad puts the price of just the interest on the debt at $199 billion a year. That's probably a low figure. The government figures that the cost is $214 billion a year, interest on the debt. Remember this summer when Hillary Clinton, defending her choice of career, made that comment she wishes she'd never made?
I suppose I could have stayed home and baked cookies and had tea, but what I decided to do was to fulfill my profession, which I entered before my husband was in public life.
Well, that caused an uproar. Traditional mothers who stayed home raising children made cookies a campaign issue. So when Family Circle offered a shot at a bipartisan bake-off, Mrs. Clinton jumped at the chance. Mrs. Clinton's chocolate chip cookie recipe against Mrs. Bush's. The results now are in. Hillary Clinton's 55.2% prefer Hillary Clinton's recipe to Barbara Bush's 44.8%. 18%, with a margin of error of plus or minus a cup of nuts.
We could have a debate on that.
Yes.
Why
Mrs.
not?
Bush used butter, Hillary Clinton used vegetable oil. That's the big difference.
Ah.
We'll be right back.
They're a new generation of Democrats, Bill Clinton and Al Gore, and they don't think the way the old Democratic Party did. They've called for an end to welfare as we know it, so welfare can be a second chance, not a way of life. They've sent a strong signal to criminals by supporting the death penalty, and they've rejected the old tax and spend politics. Clinton's balanced 12 budgets, and they've proposed a new plan investing in people, detailing $140 billion in spending cuts they'd make right now. Clinton Gore, for people, for a change.
I drink V8 because...
Hey, I think it's good for me. It makes me peppy.
You got your vitamin A, your vitamin C. I like it because it has those beta-carotenes in it.
What's that word?
Beta-carotenes.
Pardon? Beta what?
You know, beta-carotene. Muy sabroso.
Call me crazy, but I think it's delicious.
35 calories.
Really? 35? Yes.
It's a kick. I love you.
V8?
V8 keeps me thin.
It's zippy kind of thing, a zippy thing.
Hey, I know how you feel. Your weight is up, your energy's down, your self-esteem's low, your blood pressure's high. You know what you need? Exercise. But who has the time? You do. Just imagine what a difference you can make in just 20 minutes a day, 3 times a week with Nordic Trek. Nordic Trek. They call it the world's best aerobic exercise. Nordic Trek's patented flywheel provides smooth, non-jarring continuity of motion, so there's no stress to your back or knees. Your total body gets into the action. That's not true with ordinary exercisers. Nordic Trek's total body workout burns more calories. You'll lose weight, reduce stress, and feel better. I'll bet you never imagined fitness at home could be this easy. Now is the time to get rid of that unfit body. Create a new you. Try Nordic Track for 30 days at home with no risk or obligation. You'll see and feel the difference. Call for a free video and brochure.
Tonight, the vice presidential candidates are debating. Join me and my special guests at 9 o'clock Eastern when we analyze the debate and get your response by phone. Top experts, Larry King Live on CNN.
A hostage standoff in Oak City, North Carolina has ended with the deaths of a sheriff and one of the captives. The shots rang out inside the bank early this morning after a 15-hour standoff with police. Sheriff Jerry Beach was shot and killed. Responding to the call, police say the suspect, Larry Donnell Jones, took a husband and wife hostage, and then hours later police set off a percussion grenade and the shootout began. It's unclear whether the woman hostage was shot by the gunman or was caught in the crossfire. The hostage taker was shot. He's in serious condition at a nearby hospital. He's been charged with murder.
Lawyers for a murder suspect and the state will soon be locked in a legal battle featuring high-tech cartoons inside a California courtroom. CNN's Greg Lamont takes a look.
This is how the San Bernardino, California Sheriff's Department thinks Bruce Beauchamp was killed. Using information from investigators, eyewitnesses, and a pathology report, a computer animation of the alleged crime has been made.
What I am doing is I am functioning much like a police sketch artist.
A judge has ruled this high-tech cartoon will be allowed as evidence against the man accused of killing Beauchamp. That man's attorney opposes the use of such videos, but felt he had to provide one of his own.
I believe that jurors are going to confuse this, believe that this is the truth, and now they're going to decide which movie's the true movie. I mean, this is kind of like the Oscar nominations rather than a trial.
One expert, though not commenting on this case, thinks these videos may be a bad idea.
There's an enormous danger that it'll just overwhelm the rest of the evidence, and that when the jury goes back into the room to deliberate, that's the image that will stay with them.
Such videos are routinely used in civil cases involving incidents like car accidents and fires. One was used in a California trial earlier this year involving a man accused of killing his brother. The defendant was found guilty, but is appealing. Proponents say the videos help juries understand complex issues. Opponents say otherwise.
I think it's a very dangerous situation because television is such a big influence on everyone's life now that people see things that on television and they believe that they actually happen.
They're told very clearly that it's just an illustrative aid, and that's no different than a single diagram. It's just more helpful.
Poor defendants may not be able to afford such videos, while the prosecution can use public money to produce them. In such cases, a judge might rule that no videos can be introduced. Greg Lamott, CNN, Los Angeles.
The tangled world of national politics has nothing on Eau Claire Memorial High in Wisconsin. The principal has resigned and 3 assistants have been disciplined over the homecoming scandal. School officials fixed the homecoming queen election and burned ballots in a cover-up, all to make the true winner, April Schultz, lose. April is 5 months pregnant. Of the scandal, she asks, quote, if people in authority can do this over something as trivial as the homecoming queen title, what will they not do?
The United States Supreme Court has refused to reconsider its recent decision on flag burning. Without comment, it does stand a lower court ruling that said the Texas ban on flag burning violates the First Amendment. Now, the High Court first extended free speech protection to the American flag in 1989 with a 5-4 vote. It ruled the same way in 1990. But 2 of the justices who voted in the majority on both of those cases no longer are on the court, and the prosecutor in Texas apparently hoped the change would have worked in his favor. The Justice Department confirms it is looking into allegations of improper conduct by FBI Director William Sessions and his family. The investigation centers on accusations of unauthorized airplane and car travel by Mrs. Sessions, the author of a book on the FBI, disclosed today. The department was told that Sessions' wife unsuccessfully tried to steer a $100,000 government security contract on the Sessions home to a family friend.
An American captured at gunpoint by Iraqi police says he wouldn't hesitate to go back to Kuwait, where he was captured. Chad Hall had an emotional homecoming in the United States Sunday after 2 days in Iraqi custody. The weapons expert was grabbed while working at a weapons cleanup operation along Kuwait's disputed border with Iraq. Hall calls the experience a roller coaster of feelings. He told CNN's Wolf Blitzer he thought he might spend a long time in prison.
How happy I am to be home. As long as the discussion was going back and forth, I didn't feel threatened. When the gun was pulled out, then I felt threatened.
What were the impressions that you had? You spent 48 hours in Iraqi captivity. Did you ever think that this was going to be a long ordeal? Did you think this was going to be resolved quickly?
Well, I hoped that it would be a very short ordeal because I felt like I was right. But based on the things that had happened in the past, when they put me in the cell in Baghdad, I unfortunately felt I would be there for 7+ years.
The company Hall works for says no date has been set for his return.
The family of Abraham Lincoln is making yet another sacrifice for the good of the nation. We'll tell you about that when we come back.
Tonight, CNN presents an evening of special election programming. At 6:30 Eastern, Bernard Shaw and Catherine Cryer anchor a 30-minute look at the upcoming debate. At 7, Dan Quayle, Al Gore, and James Stockdale meet for the vice presidential debate live from Atlanta. At 8:30, CNN returns with analysis of the candidates' performance. And at 9 p.m., a special edition of Larry King Live. King takes your calls and listens to viewer reaction to the debate. All beginning at 6:30 Eastern tonight, only on CNN.
You're going to kill jobs.
John,
You're going to kill jobs
finish,
by cutting defense
Just let
bills.
me finish, John.
You wouldn't have passed anything this time if the president had put you on record.
We certainly would have.
For 3 years, you guys did nothing.
Wait, it's the Democrats' fault. Could have fooled me.
The top newsmakers go head-to-head with Michael Kinsley on the left and John Sununu on the right. Crossfire on CNN, where great minds come together.
The descendants of President Lincoln are helping researchers identify the cause of a genetic disease. The so-called Lincoln's disease robs victims of their muscle control. It's thought Abraham Lincoln might have contracted the disease had he lived long enough. 60 of his descendants have gathered in Cordon, Indiana, to offer blood samples and to take coordination tests. An estimated 150,000 Americans are afflicted by the so-called Lincoln's disease.
Doctors in Los Angeles don't yet know what killed the first human ever to receive a transplant of a pig liver. 26-year-old Susan Fowler died last night just hours before she was to have surgery to receive a human liver. The pig liver was transplanted into Fowler on Sunday, and the surgery was meant to keep her alive until a suitable human liver could be found.
Women with an advanced form of breast cancer may be forced to spend more than $100,000 of their own money to pay for a bone marrow transplant. Some insurance companies just won't pay for that procedure. They call it experimental. But one hospital has found a way to cut the cost in half, as CNN's Rhonda Rowland reports.
For now, a hotel in Durham, North Carolina is home for these women. They're recovering from breast cancer treatment, and instead of relying on nurses for care, they rely on their family.
You meet other people that have been at the clinic, and it's nice to meet their families. We've spent a lot of time down here just talking and sharing.
The hospital costs $2,000 a day. The hotel costs about $35 a day.
It's the best thing I heard, because the one person I did know that had been through the program, she was in the hospital for 3 months in isolation, and that must be a nightmare. I'm just thankful that those women did that for us.
Those women stayed in the hospital while their bone marrow was removed and returned after they received high doses of chemotherapy. It could take 40 days before the reimplanted marrow was ready to fight infection.
When were you first diagnosed with your breast cancer? 1989.
With a new approach, primed blood cells are returned with the bone marrow. The special cells fight infection until the bone marrow can take over. From the hotel, women walk next door for routine tests.
We do occasionally have to have a person readmitted into the hospital because of fever and other problems, and we do need to see them on a daily basis.
Studies show 15% of women with advanced breast cancer are alive 5 to 9 years following this treatment.
And then that adds a few more years to my life, and I would like to see my 2 young ones grown up.
But that's not enough to convince all insurance companies to pay. Crystal Caudill says Blue Cross Blue Shield refused to pay for her bone marrow transplant.
Yes, it makes me mad, makes me sick. I mean, it's awful that we don't have a better insurance thing in this country to take care of people when they get sick. I mean, you know, I didn't ask for the cancer.
Medicine is always criticized for every time a new technology comes along, it increases the cost of medical care. Well, I think this is a clear example in which new technology has enabled us to reduce the cost of care.
Crystal sued the insurance company and lost. She plans to appeal.
We're having to raise money through the churches and go out and beg for it off the streets or wherever we can get it.
She expects to save up to $50,000 staying at the hotel. The arrangement is making treatment possible for women who would normally be shut out. Rhonda Rowland, CNN Medical News, Durham, North Carolina.
A Texas funeral home left a gruesome calling card at the doorstep of a man who couldn't pay for his father's cremation. His father's body. The 3-day-old body was left at Larry Bojarski's Richmond apartment Monday night, covered only with a sheet. Bojarski had paid about half of the $683 cremation fee. No comment from Evans Mortuary, the funeral home involved, but another funeral home has offered to provide services and arrangements free of charge.
Each day, millions ride the New York City subway. When early prime continues, trains that are poetry in motion.
Every night during trout season, Ed Russell ties some of the best flies ever seen on Pinecrest Lake. But sometimes his arthritis pain can make it tough to sleep. And that's when his wife Ann gives him Tylenol PM. Unlike ordinary pain relievers, it has extra-strength Tylenol pain reliever, plus a gentle ingredient to help him sleep, which is good news for Ed, but not for the trout population of Pinecrest Lake. Tylenol PM, it puts arthritis pain to rest.
In order to eliminate the national debt, every family in the United States would have to write a check for $52,000. Let's hope one of the 3 candidates has a better solution. Promises, promises. Tonight, 10 Eastern on CNN.
To achieve your ultimate potential, we introduce Nordic Flex Gold, the newest idea in strength training that is 5 ways better than Soloflex. Nordic Flex Gold has linear motion to accurately simulate free weights. Soloflex uses a less effective arcing motion. Nordic Flex Gold has isokinetic resistance to match your natural strength curve for maximum results. With Soloflex, the resistance is dictated by the stretch of a rubber band. Nordic Flex Gold's isokinetic resistance also gives you speed. There are no steel plates or rubber bands to change between exercises, so your changeover time is up to 40% faster than SoloFlex. Nordic Flex Gold also has an electronic feedback system to measure your performance. SoloFlex doesn't. And best of all, Nordic Flex Gold costs 1/3 less than SoloFlex. Call now to order your Nordic Flex Gold, the ultimate strength training machine for the ultimate body.
If you think there's nothing poetic about New York City's subway system, you probably just haven't ridden it in a while. To a growing number of commuters, those who have seen the writing on the wall, the subways are becoming works of art. Jeannie Mose explains.
In New York, savvy subway riders tend to avoid eye contact with other passengers, especially those who talk to themselves out loud.
Yep, Jesus Christ, me, I'm in.
But unless you bury yourself in a newspaper or a book, the only place to look is up at the ads. Ads aimed at relief of everything from pain in your feet to problems with your teeth, from pregnancy to hernias.
It's all foot pains and warts and stuff like that.
But move over laser hemorrhoid treatments, now there's poetry in motion.
Flood tide below me.
Let there be a new flowering in the fields.
And so must be the storm.
Verse in these most adverse of conditions. The New York City Transit Authority is copying an idea first tried in the London Underground.
We do indeed have a captive audience, and one way to expose people to poetry is to make them look at it.
Instead of more depressing ads, call us when you're ready to return from the living dead. Riders can now peruse and muse over poetry from the likes of William Butler Yeats, Walt Whitman, and contemporary poets such as Lucille Clifton.
Let love be at the end.
The end of the train, in this case. Poetry down here may seem incongruous. New Yorkers tend to think of odors rather than odes in the subway.
The last thing that's on your mind is Emily Dickinson's poem, Hope is a Thing with Feathers.
The hope in New York is to make it home in one piece.
Hope is a thing with feathers that perches in the soul and sings the tune without the words and never stops at all.
Whether or not they get it, they like it.
Look at the idea.
I think it's a good idea. Anything that stimulates thought, you know, especially on a subway.
I think it's all right.
Yeah?
Y'all come on here and echo, man.
A dead poet, perhaps?
The woods are lovely, dark and deep, but I have promises to keep, and miles to go before I sleep.
And miles to go while I sleep. Jeannie Mose, CNN, New York.
When people are hearing echoes, it's time to go.
There's an echo in here. That's Early Prime. I'm Lou Waters.
I'm Sharyl Attkisson. See you back here tomorrow.
Take care. Lauren Sidney, what's next?
Here's what's next. We will tell you about a wave of violent new movies that are headed for your neighborhood theaters. And a concert security guard claims that he was hit by the star he was being paid to protect. We will have those stories and much more coming up next on Showbiz.
This could be real life.